This story begins in the depths of the ocean, where we see a dimensional rift called the Breach open, from which the first Kaiju emerged, an alien beast that advanced, destroying 3 cities until the military, with planes and tanks, finally stopped it after 6 days. And that's how Pacific Rim begins. After these events, 6 months passed before Earth was attacked again, and it wouldn't be the last time, as more and more Kaiju kept coming in the following months, plunging the world into crisis. This forced governments to unite and create the American Jaeger program, a project where robots the size of Kaiju were built to fight them. During testing, scientists discovered that the Jaeger's neural interface was too much for a single pilot, so they modified it so that 2 pilots could control each hemisphere. Thanks to this, they started winning battles, turning the pilots into heroes and the Kaiju into commodities as the world now felt safe. Time passed. And one day, at the Alaska base, we meet the pilots Raleigh Becket and his brother Yancey, who are woken up by an alarm, signaling an approaching Category 3 Kaiju. While these 2 rock stars prepare to pilot their Jaeger, we are introduced to the system's chief and the program's leader, the Marshal, who oversee everything from behind the scenes.
You're gonna get your ass kicked.
Gauge drop, Mr. Choi.
Gauge drop, sir. Getting ready to drop.
Once they are synchronized after completing the neural handshake, a telepathic connection based on memories, where both pilots enter each other's minds to bond as one, we see the brothers Jaeger, Gypsy Danger, advancing through the ocean with the mission of defending the harbor. 10 miles off the coast, a ship is trapped in the storm, and their problems are far from over as the Kaiju suddenly emerges in front of them. Despite their orders, Gypsy arrives to rescue the ship and start the battle right there. It starts strong, landing solid punches, and even managing to fire its plasma cannon. For a moment, it seems like they've defeated the beast. But after the base informs them that the Kaiju is still alive, it suddenly attacks them without warning.
That thing's still alive, sir.
Gypsy tries to use the cannon again, but this time the Kaiju is faster, tearing off its arm. Before they can react, the Kaiju pierces the hull and takes Yancey. With no other options, Raleigh pushes forward with sheer will to fight back. Despite continuing to take damage, he manages to use Gypsy's other cannon arm to blow the Kaiju's head off. However, this leaves Gypsy without power and unable to communicate with the base. The next day, while an old man and a boy were searching for treasures in the ice along the coast, they saw Becket with his last bit of strength, bringing Gypsy back. Fast forward 5 years, and humanity is losing more and more battles as Kaiju start showing up more frequently. This forces the UN to shut down the Jaeger program, giving it only 8 more months of funding before switching resources to build a massive coastal wall.
We're prepared to fund you for the next 8 months. After that, you'll receive no further support.
In Alaska, while working on one of these walls, we see Becket again, now just another worker trying to get by. During his lunch break, he watches on TV as a Kaiju breaks through one of the walls like it's nothing, but it's taken down by pilots Herc and Chuck Hansen in their Jaeger, Striker Eureka with their missiles. Right after, the Marshal shows up to offer Becket a chance to return as Gypsy's pilot since it's been rebuilt. Becket turns him down, saying he doesn't need anyone else in his head after losing his brother. But the Marshal gives him a speech about how the world is falling apart and how it's better to die fighting than stand by and watch, convincing him in the end.
The world is coming to an end. So where would you rather die? Here or in a Jaeger?
Once they arrive, they are at the last Jaeger base, the Hong Kong Shatterdome. And there he also meets Mako Mori, the director of this restoration program.
The Becket. Mako Mori, my brightest.
As he walks in, he meets the research team including Dr. Newton Geiszler, who's super passionate about Kaiju biology and loves working with numbers.
Call me Newt. Only my mother calls me doctor.
The tour of the facility continues through the workshop, where he sees the Jaegers that are still in operation being repaired and maintained. Here we see Crimson Typhoon, piloted by the Weichung triplets, Cherno Alpha, piloted by Sasha and Alexis Kaidanovsky.
Cherno Alpha. First generation Mark 1, it's a brutal war machine. Those 2, Sasha and Alexis Kaidanovsky.
And finally, they meet Hansen. After the introductions, the Marshal reveals the final plan, to put a nuclear warhead into the breach and close it for good. Dr. Hermann Gottlieb, after running the numbers, tells the Marshal that soon Kaiju will show up every week, then every 8 hours, and eventually they'll be attacking in pairs every 4 minutes.
In 4 days, we could be seeing a Kaiju every 8 hours until they are coming every 4 minutes.
But there's still hope. He's figured out a way to open the breach from their side and drop the bomb. Newton jumps in, explaining that based on his research, the Kaiju are clones.
They have the same exact DNA. They're clones.
And with the brain fragment he has, they could drift into it and figure out exactly how to get into the breach. But to everyone, it sounds pretty crazy. Mako was showing Becket the new gypsy when he ran into Tendo Choi, the Jaeger technician he used to work with.
Good to see you, buddy.
There, Becket found out that even though Mako was the best choice to be a pilot, the Marshal had banned her from doing it for some reason.
The Marshal has his reasons.
Later, Becket met Chuck, who made it clear he thought Becket was just a nuisance.
To me, you're dead weight. You slow me down, I'm gonna drop you like a sack of kaiju shit.
In the afternoon, they started the co-pilot trials, but nobody could keep up with Becket. Seeing this, he got permission from the Marshal to face Mako since she said she could beat him. She barely lost, and the match ended in a tie. Because of that, Becket wanted her as his co-pilot, but the Marshal immediately shot that down. Becket didn't get why everyone was so obedient to the Marshal, and even though he tried to find out, Mako just told him to respect him.
We don't have to just obey him.
It's not obedience, Mr. Becket. It's respect.
We would soon learn that the Marshal was really sick. Meanwhile, protests were breaking out all over the world over the cancellation of the Jaeger program. In the lab, Newton decides to take a chance and connects his brain to the Kaijus, letting him enter their linked minds. But before he can go too far, Hermann shows up and disconnects him. Meanwhile, Mako is visited by the Marshal, who finally gives her the green light to become a pilot.
A long time ago, I made you a promise.
She then heads to Gypsy to meet up with Becket. Once they're all set, they start the neural link and manage to connect successfully. Hermann also arrives to tell the Marshal about Newton. He explains that when Newton connected to the Kaiju's brain, he discovered that they follow a hierarchy and are actually colonizing beasts sent by their bosses, the precursors, who are here to consume Earth. They were even around during the dinosaur age, but had to wait until the atmosphere was polluted enough.
They're colonists. They overtake worlds. They just consume them. But the atmosphere wasn't conducive, right? So they waited it out. And now, with ozone depletion and carbon monoxide polluted waters, well, we practically terraformed it for them.
The Marshal asks for more details, but since Newton doesn't have another brain to study, he sends him to one of his contacts in the black market, Hannibal Chau.
Eugene, I need you to do it again.
I can't do it again. Not unless you have a fresh kaiju brain lying around. Do you?
This is Hannibal Chau. Go to the corner of Fong and Tull. Show them that card, look for that symbol. Do not trust him. Meanwhile,
during training, Becket has a flashback of his brother that throws them both off balance. While he snaps back to reality, Mako is stuck reliving the day a kaiju attacked her city, killed her family, and specifically hunted her down. This makes her accidentally activate the plasma cannon.
Plasma cannon powering up.
Becket tries to bring her back to her senses, but while he's watching, a Jaeger arrives, and Mako is completely out of it. To stop her, Tendo Choi has to cut off the power supply. After that, Hansen complains about Mako, and when he's face to face with her, he says she should have a leash to keep her under control.
You're gonna get us all killed, and here's the thing, Raleigh.
You just hold back your little girlfriend. One of you bitches needs a leash.
This makes Becket punch him, sparking a fight that he easily wins. And of course, defending the honor of his soon-to-be girlfriend. After that, the Marshal tells them that Mako can no longer be a pilot for everyone's safety. But Becket knows exactly why he's pulling her from the program, because he remembers what happened that day. We find out that the Jaeger that saved Mako was piloted by the Marshal, who has treated her like a daughter ever since. However, the Marshal doesn't want to talk about it and orders them to either follow his orders or leave.
Marshal, can we just talk about this for 1 second?
And all I need is your compliance. And if I can't get that, then you can go back to the wall that I found you crawling on. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, sir.
Later, Becket and Mako meet at lunch, where he apologizes for not warning her about the risks of their first neural link. Their conversation gets interrupted when a Category 4 kaiju casually comes out of the breach and heads straight for Hong Kong, just in the worst time possible. The Marshal sends all the Jaegers, except for Gypsy, to protect the coast.
You two, stay put. Let's go!
Meanwhile, Newton, following the signals from the Marshal's card, finds his way to Hannibal Chau's base. There, he asks for a brain that he needs to reconnect to a kaiju. Back at the battle, the Category 4 Kaiju, looking like a steroid-fueled Godzilla, attacks the first Asian Jaeger. The Jaeger activates its cutting blades and manages to hit back, but it's too slow to dodge the Kaiju's tail. Seeing their teammates getting beat up, Stryker leaves its position to join the fight, but it's too far away to stop the Kaiju from spitting acid on Cherno Alpha. Just when it seems Stryker is about to get there, another Kaiju pops up out of nowhere to finish the job.
We just lost Cherno, sir.
Stryker continues alone and tries to fire its missiles, but at that moment, the Kaiju unleashes a shockwave that disables Stryker and takes out the whole base.
What happened? The blast. It jumbled all the Jaeger's electrical circuits.
With no other options left, the Marshal decides to activate Gypsy since it's the only analog Jaeger that runs on nuclear power. While all this was happening, Hannibal Chau decided to hide out in his private bunker, kicking Newton out because he thought the Kaiju would be after him since he was connected to them. Newton, feeling desperate, ran to a public bunker. Meanwhile, the Hansens had the brilliant idea to surface and wave at the wild Kaiju, hoping it would get distracted until backup showed up. They got lucky when Gypsy showed up just in time. The fight started with Gypsy tearing pieces off the Kaiju, but the beast quickly grabbed Gypsy and threw it into the harbor. Once back on its feet, Gypsy responded with its rocket fist, smashing the Kaiju with shipping containers. But this Kaiju was tougher than a $2 steak, and they could only take it down with the plasma cannon. That works, but now they have to make sure those remains are really dead, so they shoot them a couple more times, just in case.
I think this guy's dead, but let's check for a pulse.
No pulse.
Meanwhile, Newton had some bad luck and was found again. Things inside the public bunker are getting weird, and Newton really starts to believe that the Kaiju are after him. And it seems to be true because a Kaiju crashes through the ceiling, exposing its glowing blue tongue to Newton, as if it's sniffing him carefully. But just when we think it's about to devour him, out of nowhere, it loses interest. Gypsy came to his rescue, swinging a ship like a sword. Unfortunately, this didn't help much because the Kaiju's tail was fast enough to surprise Gypsy by crashing through a building like it was made of cardboard. Now, you can see that the city is really in shambles. In the middle of the chaos, the Kaiju shot its acid, but it missed. It tried to use its tail. That looks like the tentacles of Spider-Man's villain, but Gypsy's coolant system frees it and took it out. However, things didn't end there. The Kaiju caught Gypsy and spread its wings, because sure, this is now a dragon with really weird eyes and blue mouth. This monster is trying to lift them out of the atmosphere, but obviously piloting it very poorly, causing the poor Jaeger to crash into everything in its path. This seems like the end of it, but at least they have a nice view of outer space. Just when they're losing atmospheric pressure, she says something in Japanese that we can't quite catch, but we assume it's something positive.
No!
Then she decides to activate the sword because, well, she's good at it, I guess. And then together, they finally defeated the Kaiju. But now they were falling from a great height. To cushion their landing, they activated their reactor, but the fall was still too fast. Luckily, there was a soccer field below, ready to be demolished and cushion their impact. Becket holds on, but his first concern is for Mako. He feels a sense of relief when he finally hears her voice again. After all, every movie needs its romantic moment. Once the danger had passed, Hannibal Chau was back in his office, running his business. He was organizing the sale of monster parts to be sold on the black market to some Germans. But just then, Newton shows up again, demanding the brain he had.
Guess who's back, you one-eyed bitch? You owe me a Kaiju brain.
Back at the Jaeger headquarters, they were welcomed back like heroes, and even the Marshal congratulated them.
Well done. Proud of you. Proud of us all.
But the party stopped when he ordered the countdown to restart for the next kaiju appearance. They must be prepared, and just at that moment of his important speech, everyone noticed his illness as blood trickled from his nose, though he didn't seem to realize it. Everyone is in shock, and the marshal hurriedly leaves while wiping his nose. This was all a remnant from his days as a Jaeger pilot, which had taken a toll on him. Meanwhile, in the city, the extraction of kaiju material was underway. They are rescuing these giant cockroach-like creatures that are emerging from the kaiju's corpse. Newton is literally desperate to get the brain quickly, but in the meantime, Hannibal's employees are giving us a valuable lesson in extraterrestrial biology. But just when we thought everything was going smoothly, Hannibal Chau's employees discovered that the kaiju's secondary brain was damaged, but just then, they heard a heartbeat. The kaiju was expecting a sweet little surprise.
It's pregnant.
Now, the employees witness the birth of its baby, which just happens to be in the same area as the brain. The new creature emerges completely frenzied, and everyone starts to flee. It manages to catch up to Newton, who trips while fleeing, but it doesn't get to eat him because it ends up choking on its own umbilical cord. And while the little creature didn't have the strength to survive being premature, the poor, frightened Newton remains screaming on the ground with the creature's jaws poised inches from him, frozen in a terrifying standoff. So, when Newton realizes he's done for, he decides there's no better idea than to approach it. Seeing this, Hannibal couldn't help but gloat about having predicted it. The death, the premature birth, the umbilical cord.
One look, one look, one look. That's all I needed. I knew he wouldn't make it.
But suddenly, for just a moment, the monster came back to life and went straight for him as his first and last meal. Now, back at the Shatterdome, the marshal is in the privacy of his bathroom, cleaning the blood from his nose when Becket arrives and asks about his illness. The marshal reveals that it's due to the early Jaegers being overloaded with radiation. The worst exposure came when he was in Tokyo, saving Mako while piloting a Jaeger alone. After that day, he retired, knowing that if he ever climbed back into a Jaeger, the radiation would kill him. Just then, they're interrupted by Tendo, who warns them about two fallen kaijus in the abyss. The marshal orders preparations for the last two Jaegers, and since Hansen Sr. is injured, he decides to replace him as the pilot. While Newton is busy trying to extract the brain from the premature baby monster, Hermann is there to inform him about the two kaijus, which contradicts his earlier prediction of 3. Newton tells him that it doesn't matter if he was wrong, and that he should help him make the neural connection before the brain dies, but Hermann insists that he never makes mistakes, so he decides to share the neural load with Newton as if they were pilots.
You would do that with me?
Well, with worldwide destruction, a certain alternative. Do I really have a choice?
We're gonna own this bad boy!
We are going to own this thing for sure!
Now, back at the base, something incredible happens. The marshal, in a pilot suit, has decided to join the action. After a motivational speech and heartfelt goodbyes, the final mission begins.
We have chosen not only to believe in ourselves, but in each other. Today we face the monsters that are at our door. Today we are canceling the apocalypse!
Meanwhile, the scientists establish the link and discover that their plan won't work since the Jaegers can't fully enter the abyss.
Are you okay?
You saw it?
Yeah.
Did you?
Listen, we have to warn them. The plan!
It's not going to work.
Gypsy and Stryker begin to descend and soon reach the entrance, where they see the kaijus waiting patiently for them to jump. Just then, the scientists arrive and, before they can unalive themselves out of despair, explain that in order to enter, they need to be connected to a kaiju since the abyss reads their DNA. Things get even worse when a Category 5 kaiju, an absolutely adorable monster, appears before them, making its debut as the first of its kind.
What category?
Category 5.
Striker! It's a Category 5!
Gypsy plans to find an opening to enter, but is soon rammed by the other kaijus, who team up to rip off one of its arms. After a failed attempt to fry one of their skulls, Gypsy uses its remaining sword to slice the crocodile kaiju in half. Meanwhile, Stryker manages to injure the largest kaiju, prompting it to call for reinforcements, giving Gypsy a brief opportunity. There's a moment of hesitation, but everyone knows that sacrifice is necessary. So, Stryker activates his bombs, exterminating the kaijus immediately.
It was a pleasure, sir.
Left with no options, and no bombs left except for Gypsy's reactor, he decides to use his own body as a weapon. Just then, the Category 5 Kaiju reappears, but instead of stopping it, it's used as a key to the abyss. Once inside, Mako's oxygen supply is running low, and since it's no longer needed, Becket hands over his supply and sends her back to the surface while he uses his last strength to reach the manual switch and activate the reactor's detonation. With just seconds left before the explosion, he injects himself.
The breach has collapsed!
Both Mako and Becket make it to the surface, and although Becket has no pulse at first, he reacts when he hears her tears.
You're squeezing me too tight. I couldn't breathe.
In the final moments, we see Hannibal Chau emerge alive from the premature Kaiju.
Where is my goddamn shoe?
And that's how the first movie of Pacific Rim wraps up. If you enjoy these recaps, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more of our videos. See you next time.